Nobody stopped. That's the thing that has to be said first, before anything else, before the man and the car and the grandmother and all of it. Nobody stopped. There were 7 people on that street when the black Mercedes wrapped itself around the pole outside the Mapo convenience store at 11:43 p.m. on a Thursday night. 7 people with phones already out, already filming, already composing the caption in their heads before the engine had finished its last shudder. Nobody moved toward it. Nobody except her. Nadia Campbell was 26 years old, Jamaican, 3 years in Seoul, still wearing her work uniform because she always forgot to change before her shift ended and her manager never said anything about it. Black trousers. White shirt with the restaurant logo on the breast pocket. Comfortable shoes because for hours on a restaurant floor will teach you things about footwear that nobody warns you about in advance. She was walking home the long way because the short way went past the fried chicken place and she was hungry and she had a rule about that. She heard the impact before she turned the corner. Not a dramatic sound, that's what people get wrong about accidents, they expect something cinematic, something that announces itself. This was just a thud. Dense and final, the sound of 2 solid things meeting at the wrong speed. And then the hiss of the engine. And then silence except for the people filming. She turned the corner and saw it. Car around the pole. The front end folded like paper. The windshield intact but crazed, 1,000 fracture lines catching the streetlight. The engine still running, a low insistent sound like something that hadn't been told yet that it was over. Steam or smoke, she couldn't tell which, rising from the hood in a thin column. And the people filming. She was already moving. Call 119, she said to the nearest phone. Not a request. The person looked at her. Call 119, she said again, in the voice she used when a table wasn't listening, the voice that came from somewhere below politeness. Then she was at the car. The driver's door was buckled but not locked. She got her fingers into the gap, pulled again, got it open on the 3rd try with a strength that arrives when your body has decided that trying is not the appropriate gear. He was inside. And she stopped, 1 second. Just one, because the man behind the wheel was not what she expected and the not expecting of it moved through her like a current. He was beautiful. Even now, even like this, head back, eyes closed, the stillness of unconsciousness on a face that would have stopped a room under any other circumstances. Dark hair. Strong jaw. A face that suggested a whole history of people who looked exactly like this going back generations. He was dressed like money, one that didn't need to announce itself. His hands were still on the wheel. Both of them. Holding on to something that was no longer moving. On the passenger seat, a phone. Screen lit. A voicemail playing. A woman's voice, laughing slightly at the edges, the voice of someone leaving a message they expected to be heard soon. Yobo, I forgot to tell you with a dry cleaning.
어제 진짜 웃겼어요.
It's been there since
그래서
Tuesday.
말인데 오늘 저녁에
Don't forget again, you always forget. She reached in. Hit pause. She put 2 fingers to his neck. Pulse, present, unsteady, the rhythm of a body that had absorbed something significant and was taking inventory. Her eyes went to his face. Blood from his nose, dark against his upper lip, already drying at the edges. A cut above his eyebrow from the airbag or the wheel. His chest moving. Breathing. He was breathing. Okay, she said. To him, to herself, to the general situation. Okay. I've got you. She got her hands under his arms. He was not a small man. She was aware of this immediately. But she had grown up in Kingston with 3 brothers and 5 years of restaurant work had done things for her upper body that she was now grateful for. She pulled. Adjusted her grip. Pulled again. Got him out of the seat, got his weight against her, got her arm across his back and his arm across her shoulders and started moving. 7 people on the street. Still filming. Little help. She said. One person, a woman, middle-aged, grocery bag still in her hand, came forward. Took his other arm. Together they got him to the pavement. Got him down, got him on his back, got him away from the car that was still hissing and smoking and potentially had opinions about its next move. Hospital is 3 blocks, the woman said. I know. Nadia was already assessing. Neck stable, he hadn't been thrown, the belt had held. The nosebleed was slowing. The cut above the eye was shallow. His breathing was evening out. Concussion almost certain. Internal injuries unknown. Unknown was the problem. I need a taxi, she said to the street. Nobody moved. She looked up. At the phones. At the faces behind them. Someone get me a taxi. A taxi came. She rode with him to a hospital with his head in her lap and her fingers at his pulse and the phone on the seat beside her. The voicemail still paused at a woman's voice saying, "Don't forget again, you always forget." She did not press play. Now before we go any further, you need to understand something about Yoon Tae-young. Because this is not a story about a reckless man. Not a story about someone who didn't care. This is a story about a man who cared so much, for so long, about one person, that when that person was gone he didn't know what to do with all that caring. Didn't know where to put it. Didn't know who he was without it. The Yoon family had been bosom money for 3 generations. The money that had a building named after it, that got mentioned in the same sentence as the city's history, that came with a grandmother who ran everything, the business, the family, the temperature of every room she walked into, with the efficiency of a woman who had decided at some point that competence was the highest form of love. Tae-young was her favorite. She would never say so. She didn't have to. He had met Sohar at university. She was from Daejeon, studying architecture, and she had looked at him across a seminar room on the first day and said, loud enough for the row between them to hear, "You're sitting in my light." He had moved. She had sat down. He had spent the next 6 months finding reasons to sit near her again. They had been married for 4 years when the diagnosis came. Rare, aggressive, the illness that moves faster than hope. She had handled it with the grace of a woman who had strong opinions about how to do difficult things. She had said, "Tae-young, I need you to promise me something. Promise me you won't stop. When I'm gone. Promise me you'll keep going." He had promised. He had meant it. He had lied. Not on purpose. She had been gone for 6 weeks when he got in the car at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night against the advice of his grandmother, his cousin, his best friend, and his own doctor. They had said, "You're not ready. You're not sleeping. You shouldn't be driving." He had heard them. He had nodded. He had taken the keys. He drove the route they used to drive together. Along the Han. Past the restaurant where they had their first date. Past the park where she had made him walk in the rain because she loved rain and he didn't, and she had said, "Learn to love it, Tae-young, it's not going anywhere." He drove and he played her voicemail. The last one she'd left him. "Dry cleaning, Tuesday, don't forget." Her voice laughing at the edges. He was listening to her voice when he missed the turn. She was still there at 3 a.m. That's the thing. She had nowhere she needed to be, her shift was done, her apartment was 10 minutes away, her flatmate would be asleep, nothing was waiting. But she had ridden with him to the hospital and handed him off and given her details to the intake nurse and gone to sit in the waiting room because she didn't know who to call and she couldn't make herself leave. She didn't know why. She told herself it was the nursing instinct. The pediatric ward she'd volunteered at in Kingston, the first aid course she'd done 3 years ago when she first arrived in Seoul, the general human compulsion to see a thing through to the end before you walked away. She told herself all of this and stayed anyway. The nurse came at 1 a.m. concussion, confirmed. 2 cracked ribs. No internal bleeding, which was the word that mattered. He was unconscious but stable, which was the other word that mattered. They had a family contact. Was she family? No, I was there. The nurse looked at her. At the dried blood on her white shirt. At the restaurant logo on the breast pocket. "You can go home, I know," Nadia said. She stayed. She was dozing in the chair, head against the wall, when she felt it. The change in the room's atmosphere. The specific shift that happens when someone with authority enters a space. She opened her eyes. The woman was small. 70s. Dressed in the way of people who have never needed clothes to announce them, dark coat, good shoes, silver hair pulled back with the precision of someone who had been doing it the same way for 50 years. She walked through the waiting room like the waiting room had been expecting her. The nurses moved differently when she passed. Nadia noticed that. She noticed everything. The woman spoke to the desk. Was taken through. Came back out 10 minutes later and stood in the waiting room doorway. Her eyes went around the room. Past the other waiting faces. Past the nurses. Past the chairs. And landed on Nadia. On the dried blood on the white shirt. On the restaurant logo. On the comfortable shoes. The woman walked over and sat down in the chair beside her. Not across from her. Beside her. She didn't speak immediately. She sat with the stillness of someone who had learned long ago that silence was a tool, not an absence. Outside, Seoul did its 3 a.m. thing, enormous and indifferent. Nadia waited. After a long time, the woman spoke. You stayed. Not a question. The tone of someone confirming something they already knew. Yes. You pulled him out. He needed pulling out. 7 people on that street. The woman's voice was even. The voice of someone who had been receiving reports her entire life and knew how to hear them. You were the only one who moved. I was closest. The woman looked at her. Dark eyes, direct, with the quality of vision that came from decades of watching people and knowing immediately what they were. What's your name? Nadia. Nadia Campbell. Jamaican. Yes. You work at the restaurant on Mapodero. The one with the yellow sign. Nadia looked at her. I own the building, the woman said. I know my tenants, I'm Yoon Bokja. His grandmother. He's going to be all right. The nurse said. I know what the nurse said. Bokja looked at her hands in her lap. Old hands, capable hands, the hands of a woman who had built things and held things and let go of things over 70 years. He drove that road on purpose. You understand that? He wasn't trying to die, he was trying to feel something that wasn't grief. He thought speed would do it. He's done this before. Different things. Same reason. His wife. 6 weeks. Bokja's voice didn't change. The grief was in there, Nadia could hear it, but it was old grief that had been carried long enough to become load-bearing. So how was she stopped? Started again. She was the architecture of this family. Even in 4 years. She just held things in the right position. Nadia thought about the voicemail. The laughing voice. Don't forget again, you always forget. I didn't press play, the voicemail. On his phone. I paused it. When I was getting him out. It was playing and I paused it. Nadia met the old woman's eyes. It felt private. Something moved across Bokja's face, controlled, the expression of a woman allowing herself one thing. Thank you, she said. They sat together in the 3 a.m. A Jamaican waitress in a blooded work shirt and a bosom grandmother in a good coat, and between them the silence of 2 women who have both, in their different ways, been taking care of things that needed taking care of. He came back to a white ceiling. The light was wrong for home. Too flat, too even. The smell was wrong too, antiseptic underneath something floral, someone's hand cream or soap. He lay still and took inventory the way he always did when waking somewhere unfamiliar, a habit from childhood, from growing up in a family where the room sometimes changed overnight. Ribs. Yes. The breath confirmed that. Head. The thick weight of a concussion sitting behind his eyes. And then, a sound. Rhythmic. Coming from his left. He turned his head. She was asleep in the chair beside his bed. still in her work uniform. Head at the angle of someone who had fallen asleep without intending to, tilted back against the wall, one hand loose in her lap. There was something dried on her shirt that it took him a moment to identify. His blood. He looked at her, at the restaurant logo on her pocket and at the comfortable shoes. At the exhaustion on her face that wasn't one bad night but something longer, the exhaustion of someone who worked hard and had been working hard for a long time and had added pull a stranger from a car and sit in a hospital until morning to the top of a shift that had already been long. His grandmother was in the other chair, awake, watching him with a look she always wore when she was deciding how much to say. She pulled you out, Bokja said. He looked back at the woman asleep in the chair. And then she stayed, Bokja said. How long? You've been here 2 days, she's been here most of it. She goes to her shift and she comes back. She brings food. She sits. She doesn't ask for anything. He looked back at the chair, at the hand loose in her lap. At the dried blood on the white shirt that she hadn't changed because she kept coming back before she had time to. What's her name? Nadia, from Jamaica. She paused Soha's voicemail. When she was pulling you out. She said it felt private. Something moved through his chest. Not pain, exactly. The thing that lived next to pain. The thing grief had been pressing on for 6 weeks until it had become the only thing he could feel. He looked at this woman he had never met, asleep in a hospital chair, and felt it, quiet and completely unwelcome in its timing. She was real, she was present, and she was here in a way that nothing had been here since the world changed shape. He looked at the ceiling. Soha ya, he thought. What do I do with this? The room was quiet. The machines beeped their small reassurances. Outside, Seoul continued. He waited for her to wake up. She woke at 7. Took 3 seconds to remember where she was. Looked at the bed. Found him looking back. She sat up straight. Pulled her professionalism around her the way you pulled a coat on. You're awake. You stayed. I wanted to make sure. You came back. After your shift. My grandmother said. I had nowhere urgent to be. Nadia. He said her name like he'd been carrying it. Like it had weight. My grandmother told me, the voicemail. She didn't say anything. Thank you for pausing it. Not everyone would have thought to do that. Most people would have. He stopped. Thank you. It was hers, it should stay hers. I'm Yoon Tae-young. I know. Your grandmother told me. She told me about you too. What did she say? She said you have good hands and a good voice and you didn't flinch. She said those were the 3 things. Your grandmother narrows things down. She always has. Nadia looked at his cut above his eye, butterfly stitched now. At the way he was holding himself against the ribs. At the face that was still striking even wrecked, maybe more so, all the performance stripped away by 2 days of unconsciousness, just the architecture of him left. You were advised not to drive. Yes. And you drove anyway. Yes. That road. At that time. He met her eyes. Didn't explain. Didn't dress it up. Just, yes. The honesty of a man who didn't have the energy for anything else. She nodded. The nod that wasn't judgment. The nod that was just seeing clearly and letting him know she saw. I'm going to get you water, and then I'm going home to change this shirt. She looked down at it. I've been meaning to do that. You don't have to come back. I know. She came back. It was 3 weeks before he was discharged. The ribs required monitoring, the concussion required observation, and his grandmother required that he stay where someone with medical training could see him, which was a requirement nobody in the Yoon family had the energy to argue with. Nadia came after her shifts. She brought food the 3rd day, not hospital food, real food, from the Jamaican place in Mapo that she'd been going to since she arrived in Seoul. She put it on the table beside his bed without making it a thing. He ate it without making it a thing, too. They sat and talked about things, the restaurant, the hospital, the hierarchy of Seoul convenience store snacks, which he had opinions about that she found unreasonable. She argued back. He argued back harder. She won. He noticed, in those 3 weeks, things. The way she laughed with her whole face, hiding nothing. The way she talked about Kingston with the homesickness of someone who had chosen to leave and didn't regret it and still missed it every day. The way she was with the nurses, easy, collegial, the warmth of someone who understood what their work cost. The way she sat in the chair like she'd decided to be there and meant it. He noticed the way she never mentioned Soha unless he did. And when he did, she listened. Fully. Without performing sympathy or rushing past it or treating the name like something to be careful around. One evening he talked for an hour about Soha. About the first date, the seminar room, the rain, the 4 years. About the diagnosis. About the promise he'd made and the way he'd broken it not on purpose but completely. Nadia listened to all of it. When he finished she said, she knew you'd break it. The promise. She knew. She asked you to make it because she needed to hear it. Not because she thought grief was something you could outpromise. She knew you. She knew what 6 weeks would look like. She asked for the promise anyway because she loved you and she wanted you to have something to work toward. You didn't know her, he said. Not an accusation, a wondering. No, but she left you a voicemail about dry cleaning. A woman who loves that completely, she knew everything. She would have liked you. People keep saying that to me, and then caught herself. Sorry, that was. What people? The grandmothers, in these situations. They always say that. What situations? I'm not ready, I want to be honest about that. I know. She's 6 weeks gone. I know that too. But he stopped. Found the words the same way he found everything now, with a man learning a new language. I look forward to you coming. I notice when it's been more than a day. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything with it, I'm not asking for anything, Tae-young. I'm just here. That's all. Why? She thought about the street, the phones and the 7 people filming. The engine still running and the pole and the voicemail playing into the empty air. Because nobody else stopped, and stopping felt like the only right thing. His grandmother came the next morning while Nadia was on her shift. She sat across from Tae-young with her tea and her 3 things, and she said, "That girl. Halmoni. Let me finish. When Soha was sick, the last month, she called me. You didn't know this. She called me and she said, Halmoni, watch out for him after. He's not going to know how to be alone. He needs someone with good hands and no patience for his nonsense." She looked at her grandson. "I have been watching, for 6 weeks. Tae-young said nothing. That girl carried you on her back, Tae-young. In a work shirt. At midnight. And then she came back. She picked up her tea. Soha would have found her very funny and very right. So do I. It's too soon. I didn't say now. I said don't let her go thinking she's nothing to you. She doesn't know she's something to you. Tell her. I don't know how. You design buildings. You know how to start with the foundation." She stood. Smoothed her coat. "Start there." He told her on a Tuesday. Not with the speech he had drafted in his head and discarded for times because it felt like too much or not enough. She had arrived after her shift, still in the work uniform he'd told her she didn't need to wear here and that she wore anyway out of habit, and she had put food on the table and sat in the chair and pulled out her phone to show him something her mother had sent from Kingston, and he had said, "You're something to me." She looked up. "I don't know what yet, and I'm not asking you to wait for me to figure it out. You asked me once why I drove that road. And the answer is that I was trying to hear her voice and feel less alone at the same time. I don't need the road anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know how to say it better than that. You're not ready. No. Okay. Okay, that's enough. Okay, it's honest. She put her phone down. And honest is the foundation. I'll take the foundation. My grandmother said that. Your grandmother is a very smart woman. She said you have good hands. My hands are excellent, I've been saying this. He laughed. It surprised them both. Not the shadow of one this time, the real thing, sudden and unguarded, the laugh of a man ambushed by a feeling he'd forgotten he was capable of. She watched it happen. Didn't look away. Held the moment like you hold something you want to remember exactly. Spring. Busan this time. The Yoon family house, which was less a house and more a statement, sitting above the city with the harbour below it and the view that Soha had called aggressively beautiful and meant as a compliment. The garden was starting. The grandmother had opinions about the garden that she shared with the gardener on a weekly basis, and the gardener had stopped arguing. Nadia was on the terrace. She had her coffee. She had her phone. Her mother had called that morning, Sunday, always Sunday, and had asked the usual questions and then the unusual one, when am I meeting this man, Nadia? And Nadia had said soon, Mama, and her mother had said soon is not a date, give me a date, and it was the most Jamaican conversation she had ever had and she had loved every second of it. The terrace door opened. Taeyang came out with his coffee. Sat beside her. Neither of them spoke for a while, looking at the harbour below, the morning light on the water. He was different here, in Busan, in this house, in this air, less held. Like the city had given him permission to be the version of himself that existed before the grief had needed so much tending. Halmoni wants to take you to the market today. I know. She already called me. She called you before she told me. She does that. I'm aware. Nadia looked at the harbour. At the water doing its permanent indifferent beautiful thing. She thought about Kingston. About the Sunday morning sound of it. About the way this terrace in Busan had started, without announcement, to produce a version of the same feeling. I called her back. My grandmother. My mother. About dates. She looked at him sideways. She wants one. He was quiet, looking at the water. June, Kingston in June. I looked it up, June is good there. Not too hot. Your mother mentioned a restaurant in New Kingston she likes. She called me last week. She called you. To check you were being treated right. I told her about the architect qualification I'm going back to finish. She said that was acceptable. She also said don't make my daughter wait too long for anything. We are Jamaican women and we do not wait. Nadia pressed her hand over her mouth. Book the flights, she said. Already done. She laughed. The full one, the Kingston one, the one that arrived before she could arrange her face around it, and he watched it happen the way he always watched it happen, with the expression of a man who had once driven a road at midnight trying to feel something. He felt everything now. Inside the house, somewhere, his grandmother was already preparing for the market with the efficiency of a woman who had been running things for 70 years and had recently added making sure these two don't waste time to her list of responsibilities. She had Soha's photograph on the kitchen windowsill. She had put it there herself, the day Nadia first came to the house, in the spot where the morning light hit it best. Some things made room. That's all. Not replaced. Not erased. Just made room. Taeyang, she had said at the funeral. She asked me to tell you when I found her. When I found the right one. She had looked at him over her tea with the precision of 70 years. I'm telling you. The harbour moved. The light shifted. June was 5 months away. It was enough. Here's what I want to leave you with. 7 people on that street. 7 phones out. 7 people who saw a car wrapped around a pole with the engine still running and a man inside and made the calculation, not my problem, not my risk, not my story. And 1 woman who had just finished a waitress shift, who was hungry and tired and taking the long way home to avoid a chicken place, who turned the corner and didn't calculate at all. She just moved. That's the whole thing, really. The whole story lives in that. Because the taxi and the hospital and the grandmother and the terrace in Busan and the June flights to Kingston, none of it exists without the moment she decided not to walk past. You can talk about fate. You can talk about timing. You can talk about the right person at the right corner at the right 11:43 p.m. Or you can talk about a woman who saw something that needed doing and did it. Who stayed when she could have gone? Who paused a dead woman's voicemail because it felt private? Who sat in a hospital chair in a blooded work shirt for 2 days because she had started something and she wasn't the type of person who left things unfinished? Some people walk past. Some people stop. Everything, always, depends on which one you are. If this story found you, if you were with Nadia from that street all the way to that terrace, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what got you first? The voicemail? The grandmother? Or you stayed? Because that conversation is going to run all week. See you in the next one.